Open the door. Open the door.
I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions for you. What? Are you sure?
Welcome back, creepy crew. It's great to see you all again. Tonight we have something really special lined up. We've received 3 spine-chilling stories submitted by our very own subscribers, and I need your help to decide who will be our first-place winner. The stakes are high. Our first-place winner will receive a $100 Cash App prize, our second-place winner will get $50, and our third-place winner will take home $25. So, here's how it works. After listening to all 3 stories, place your votes under the pinned comment below this video. Let me know which story you think deserves to win. Thank you all for your incredible support and for being the best part of this channel. Now, let's dive into these creepy stories. In my early 20s, I suffered from severe sleep paralysis episodes. They happened so often that I could recognize the warning signs before they fully set in. My bed shaking under my legs, the ringing in my ears, the inability to fully open my eyes, my jaw clenched shut, my extremities completely immobilized, and the disembodied groans and growling. One afternoon, I decided to take a nap. As I started to wake up, I felt the bed shaking before I even opened my eyes. I tried to coach myself through it. Okay, it's just another episode. We've got this. It'll be over soon. Come on, brain and muscles, sync up. I barely managed to open my eyes and look around. I saw my windows, my legs on my bed, my dresser, and my closet. I tried to go back to sleep, hoping to avoid the episode, but nothing worked. I opened my eyes again, and that's when I saw him. He was standing at the foot of my bed, watching me. He had brown hair, pale skin, and looked no more than 7 or 8 years old. It was just my grandmother, sister, and me living in the house. All of us Latinas, brown and proud. Where did this little white boy come from? And why was he wearing a porcelain cherub mask? Just then, my sister entered my room and went straight to my arts and crafts drawer. The little boy kept watching me while my sister searched for whatever she needed. I tried to call out to her, but nothing came out. I tried to reach out to her, but my body wouldn't move. She grabbed what she needed and left, closing the door behind her. I looked back at the boy, but he was no longer at the foot of my bed. He had moved to the right side, slowly walking up with one hand on my bed. As he got closer, I noticed something horrifying. Behind the sweet cherub mask were black, empty voids where his eyes should have been. I screamed, but no sound came out. He stopped and latched onto my blanket. I then noticed a second figure in my room, a tall, slender shadow entity. I had seen it before, sometimes with 1 or 2 other shadow beings. But this was the first and last time I ever saw the little boy. I don't remember what happened next, but I eventually woke up fully. I brushed it off as a vivid nightmare and went to find my sister. I asked if she had come into my room while I was sleeping. She immediately apologized for taking my things without asking. She needed my scissors, but didn't want to wake me. I told her it was fine and to put them back when she was done. Normally, I would be annoyed with her, but the chilling realization had my full focus. That wasn't a nightmare. That thing with the mask and the shadow being were in the room with me, and with my sister. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 16, and I often visited my aunt. She lived in this old apartment, the kind you read about in ghost stories. And when I say it was haunted, I mean it was really haunted. One weekend, I decided to stay over. Since it was a 1-bedroom apartment, I crashed on the couch. That night, I fell asleep with nothing unusual on my mind. At some point, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. As I tried to get up, something was holding me down. I opened my eyes and found myself in a casket. Yes, a real casket, the kind they bury people in. I was mortified. My heart raced as panic set in. I pushed against the lid, but it wouldn't budge. Tears streamed down my face as I struggled. The only thing I could think to do was pray. So, I prayed and pushed, praying harder with each effort. Finally, I closed my eyes and offered one last desperate prayer. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the couch. The casket was gone. I know it wasn't a dream. How do I know? Because I pinched myself during the ordeal and I felt the pain. This really happened to me. To this day, I don't know why it happened, but it did. I've always been sensitive to the supernatural, but this was something else entirely. That's my story, and it still haunts me whenever I think about that night at my aunt's place. Back in the 90s, I was working the streets of New York, hustling to get by. Life wasn't easy, but I managed. One year, I decided to take a break and treat myself to a trip to New Orleans. I'd heard about the vibrant life and the mystery of the French Quarter, and I wanted to experience it for myself. One night, as I wandered through the lively streets, I saw a man standing under a street lamp. He was dressed in a suit that looked like it was straight out of the 1940s, sharp, clean, and definitely out of place. My curiosity got the better of me, and I approached him. He introduced himself as Louis. There was something charming and old-fashioned about him that drew me in. We hit it off immediately. We laughed, we talked, and we ended up at a cozy bar nearby. It had a vintage feel, like it belonged in another era. We drank, shared stories, and enjoyed each other's company. As the night grew late, Louis insisted on walking me back to my hotel. Ever the gentleman, he kissed my hand and wished me a good night. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I went to the front desk and asked the attendant about Louis, describing his appearance in detail. The attendant gave me a puzzled look before saying, "That man you described? He's been dead for over 50 years. Folks say he still haunts the French Quarter." I laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke, but the attendant's serious expression didn't waver. Feeling a mix of disbelief and curiosity, I decided to go back to the bar where Louis and I had spent the evening. When I arrived, my heart skipped a beat. The place was boarded up, looking like it hadn't been open for decades. I stood there, staring at the dilapidated building, trying to wrap my head around what had happened. Had I really met a ghost? The night felt so real, so vivid. The taste of the drinks, the warmth of Louis's hand. It was all too real to be a dream. I never got any answers, but that trip to New Orleans changed me. Those were the creepy stories submitted by our own creepy crew members. Now, it's time to vote for your favorite story. Head to the pinned comment below and cast your vote. Stay subscribed and keep watching. You might be the next contest winner. While you're voting, enjoy these spine-chilling ghost stories from TikTok. And as always, stay creepy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, so for context, at the time I lived with my best friend, and my best friend, I love her so much, she dabbled, okay? We'll say she dabbled in things that she shouldn't have been dabbling in. And because she dabbled in these things, like magic, it created a really haunting environment. So to set the scene, up to this point, we had been hearing a lot of stuff around the house. And it got so bad that at some point I started putting like salt in front of my door and in front of my closet. And I think like crystals and stuff, just because it was getting so out of control. And so this one night, We didn't have cable. I don't think the power went out. I think it was just that we didn't have any cable, so we didn't really have anything to do. And like the house was always really dark anyways when I would get nighttime, like the lighting, I don't know, it just was always really dark. So my best friend had a big safe, like really large safe in her room. And this is like, I don't even know how much this thing weighed, but it was significantly heavy. Okay. And so if you were going to move it, you would need another person to help you at least, like physically carry it. And so it was me, her, and her niece, and we're sitting downstairs on the couch. And when we're sitting on this couch, we hear the safe being like pushed or something across the room. And I look at her and I go, "Was that your safe?" And she's like, "I don't know." I was like, "Okay." So we moved on. So we're still sitting on the couch, and my friend goes and puts her niece to bed. So they're in her mom's room and they're asleep. So now I'm on the couch. I'm like having a really hard time falling asleep. I feel really uncomfortable. I'm feeling really just anxious and uneasy. And then I start to I hear like footsteps coming down the stairs. Again, it is just us three there in the house. And I hear at the very front door, I hear breathing. So it's like, and at this point, I'm panicked. I'm so panicked. And I'm like, "Hey, do you hear that?" And she's like, "No, I don't hear anything. Maybe it's the cat." The cat's next to me, okay? The cat is right next to me. And then I hear the sound of breathing go from right there to the cat. I'm flying. I go to the room. I'm in the bed with them. And then as I'm going to the room, like walking in to get to the room to get into the bed, I start to feel like I'm going to pass out. And as I'm starting to feel like I'm going to pass out, I feel like I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like I don't even know how to describe it. I just felt like I was not in my body anymore. And so as I'm starting to like pass out, because that's what's happening, passing out, my best friend's niece wakes up screaming, like screaming bloody murder and just clutching onto me. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. The monster, the monster. And like, I don't remember what happens after that. I wake up the next morning. I feel fine. And I asked my best friend, I'm like, what the hell happened last night? Like, what was that sound? I feel like something tried to come into my body. Like, I feel like something tried to, like, you know? And she was just like, yeah, I think that I pissed something off, or she like made somebody angry. And anyways, they couldn't get to her. Like basically what she told me was that she was messing with something she wasn't supposed to be, and this was like a warning to her because I'm her best friend, and obviously like her niece is her whole world. And so this was her warning of like, you need to stop messing with whatever you're messing with. So yeah, that's like one of my many horrific ghost stories. That's like the worst. That's like top. I don't even know that I did it justice by explaining it, but it was horrifying. And needless to say, I eventually moved out. Still besties with her because I love her. Um, but yeah, anyways, if you stayed around to watch this video, please consider donating to my really good friend Abdullah and his family, which now consists of 19 people. They are really in need of funds, so when the border does eventually open, they can safely evacuate into Egypt. Even though the border is closed right now, that does not mean or negate the fact that Palestinians in Gaza are currently in dire need of food, shelter, clothing, basic necessities that everyone else needs, but also the fact that they are not able to work. Like, please keep that in mind. The link is in my bio, and we are so close to reaching our first goal. So please, 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 even if you just share the video, I am currently suspended from doing anything that has to do with paying for promotions, which is how I was getting funding in the first place. So please like, share, comment, literally do the most. If you want to follow Abdullah and any updates, his Instagram will be in the comments of this video, and so will the link to his fundraiser. I will make sure to post updates, because the first update I will have will be tomorrow, because we just did a transfer of funds and he was able to thankfully get the funds to his family. And so we'll have like pictures of receipts, videos of things that they got, and of them with the things that they got from the money that we were able to transfer. So thank you.
I plugged in my phone and my video quality went way down, so I'm so sorry. But I have a list of scary ghost stories I wanted to tell, and they're all incredibly short except the last one. So I'm trying to think how to break this up so I don't have just a 10-minute long video again, because those get old. So I'll start with my list and I'll make another video if I have to. So my experiences started when I was living in my childhood home, and it continued throughout my entire life there until I moved out when I was 18. I would hear my voice quite often, and it was in a whisper, and it was like both in my head and out of my head. Bear with me. It is what it is. I can't explain these things. Mental issues, I don't know, but that's kind of what I wrote it off as I was like, okay, the mind playing tricks on me. I've heard that's a thing. And yeah, again, and my name would be whispered, Katie. And it'd be loud enough to where I'd like take off my headphone just to see if anyone was trying to talk to me. Excuse me. And yeah, no one was. I thought I was the only one having those experiences, but my sister tells me that when she was living there, she had the exact same thing happen, only this voice at one point was way behind her. She could hear it, and it got super close in her ear and went, Hannah. So I would have shit my pants. I am so glad I never experienced that. The voices were like never necessarily aggressive. So bless her heart. And the only time I ever heard my voice said again, like in my head and outside of my head at the same time, or basically heard disembodied voices, is after my fiance passed away. And I heard my name said, and another time I was doing something potentially fatal with a knife. I was cutting up stuff at work, and I'm trying to get the knife out of this avocado pit, and I'm pulling the blade towards me. I was half asleep. It was early in the morning, and I hear this voice go, "Don't do that." Like all urgent and scared. I straight up wrote down crying. I even wrote it in my journal like, I've lost my mind. I finally snapped. So yeah, those are the only times I've like heard voices. Seeing ghosts, I guess that's just not my thing. I just hear stuff. So I think I'll leave that. And that's just my creepy voice experiences. But the next video is about when I was a maid, and I would go clean all these gorgeous mansions, really old mansions. Supposedly one was built on like Indian burial grounds. You know the gist. Anyway, that'll be my next one.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8,
I have such a love-hate relationship with these filters. So this is my second video of telling my ghost stories or ghostly experiences. So probably I was anywhere from 19 to 21, and I was working as a maid for a cleaning company, and I was going to clean this gorgeous brand new mansion that was built out in the foothills. And overlooking the Idaho State Penitentiary. You could see down into the courtyard where everyone had like gathered around on the foothills and watched the hangings. So these people needed television bad. Like, I guess their books weren't that good. I don't know. But anyway, these foothills were apparently Indian burial ground. And this woman who had just gotten this home was telling me about how she hears footsteps all the time and voices and doors slamming. And it's not just her, that her and her neighbors, at least the neighbors she's talked to, have experienced the exact same thing. So that whole old tale about Indian burial grounds, I guess that's legit. So another house I cleaned, which was actually in the area, like it was down on the road that led to the penitentiary, called Warm Springs. And this house was so old mansion was so old that its power was run by a water mill back in the day. And it had a servant's quarters downstairs in the basement. And their table probably sat, I can't remember, it was over a decade ago, probably like 12 people. It was very long. So it's in the dining room, and it goes for what feels like forever. And at the head of the table, where the master would sit, there's a button underneath the carpet, the rug, and he'd push it with his foot and it would buzz in the kitchen. And so all the servants would come out and serve them their meals. I'm sorry that you're mostly just looking at the ceiling. Anyway, so my coworker is cleaning, and she calls for her other coworker, and she hears a little girl's voice go, "Pam's not here." And she goes, "Oh, thank you," and she's never seen a little girl there. As far as she knows, this woman doesn't even have grandkids. She definitely doesn't have small children. So she goes and she talks to her. She's like, "Hey," because she didn't even see a kid. She didn't hear a kid running around. She goes, "Hey, do you have some kids staying here?" And she goes, "Oh no, like the owner didn't miss a beat." Like, she was like, "Oh no, that's the little girl that lives here. She's a ghost. And we have lots of ghosts here. You don't need to worry about it. They're all very nice. The girl is very playful. And the man will just like chat a few words. But for the most part, he doesn't play tricks or anything. Like, they're all very friendly." And my coworker's like, "Oh, cool. All right." And, yeah, that's that. So my last story will actually be of something ghostly, like an experience I had that scared the crap out of me. And I thought people were playing tricks on me at first, but turns out it was very real. So, come back for part 3.
All right, y'all, I'm jumping on this trend. As a psychic medium empath, I have had dozens, so many paranormal experiences. And I was going to share, about a week ago, some experiences I've had, growing up and recently. However, I'm in New Orleans currently, and I experienced one of the craziest, greatest spiritual experiences of my life. Actually, I've had a few here, but I'm going to explain one. So tonight, me and my mom took a cemetery tour with a paranormal investigator. This guy knows his shit. He's a local and just knows his shit. And let me back up a little bit. So a week before my trip, I have never been to New Orleans, okay? I had a dream that I was in a New Orleans cemetery. I just knew it was New Orleans. And the tombstone I was looking at said Rivet. And I knew that he was a veteran. And I was like, this is really strange, because that thought and that image kept popping in my brain, my entire trip and before. And so I asked the tour guide at the end, I was like, "Do you know of a Rivet? Since you've done these tours, so much, have you come across a tombstone with the name Rivet?" And afterwards, he pulled me aside and he told me about this website called findagrave.com. Check it out. So I typed in the name Rivet. Guess who's buried in the New Orleans cemetery that I literally went to tonight. Rivet. How did I know? And why do I know? Like, why would I have this premonition? Spookiest part is, if that's not spooky enough, the paranormal investigator pulled my mom and I aside while we were at the Hurricane Katrina Memorial Cemetery. And only us two. And he goes, go walk through those trees. When you get to the bushes, take a left at the fence. Go down to the end. There is an entity that I know of, and many of my tours have witnessed, an entity that does not like us being there. Okay? So me and my mom were like, let's go. So we have our EMF detectors, okay? It's an electromagnetic frequency detector. And we went over there and we pull out our phones to take pictures and videos to see if we catch any orbs or anything on camera, you know? And my mom literally, okay, first off, my mom is very sensitive to the paranormal and energies and all that, okay? She's not afraid of it. She will chase it. She will do anything to find any evidence of an afterlife, you know? So all of a sudden, she's holding her phone up just as I'm holding it, you know? Freezes, like frozen. And she is staring at something. She goes, you see that? Do you see that? And I was like, take a picture, take a picture. She couldn't even move her hands, her thumbs, her fingers. She was paralyzed. And I had to literally press the video record button on her fucking phone. Okay? I look in the direction that she's looking at. I shit you not. There is a hooded figure about 25 feet away from us. Okay? We just book it running. You know, because we captured this on video. Okay, so we're going to show our tour guide. We get to him. The video is gone. Okay? My mom's EMF detector is at 11.3. And there's a picture only of the entity, okay? This is crazier. This gets crazier. Oh my god. We get on the bus. I am sitting next to my mom, okay? And we're heading back to the French Quarter. And my mom takes a screenshot of the picture zoomed in on the entity that she literally captured, okay? Like, it was a picture, not a video there anymore. Like, the video's gone, okay? And then we look back through her album, you know, her photo album on her phone. And the original picture is gone. Only the screenshot is there. Then we go to dinner at this vampire cafe. And the original picture shows up on her phone again. Like, what? I'm sorry if this was such a confusing story, but like, wild. If you want to see the picture of Rivet and his tombstone to like really like verify that like this guy exists, let me know. When I found out he exists, I almost just freaked the fuck out, okay? I did freak the fuck out. So he was in the Navy. He was 19 years old. His name is Rivet, and I cannot pronounce his last name. I apologize. It's French, as there is a lot of French here, you know? Yeah, very spooky. But I'm in New Orleans. It's been amazing. I don't want to leave. I love it here. The energy of the people, the voodoo. And yeah, if you want to know any spooky stories from me, let me know. I've got a lot.
Okay, so I'm going to start just by saying, if I'm going to tell you this story, I'm going to do it outside in my backyard because I do not want them finding me and somehow that makes sense in my head. So we're outside, I don't care how hot it is. So let's rewind 5 years ago when I first went to the museum. It was for my birthday. My husband took me, and at first, you know, nothing really seemed out of the ordinary. I did see the waivers, we signed them, but to be quite honest, even though I was a fan of his show, I didn't know if this was kind of like theatrics, you know, by having a waiver signed and kind of like hyping it up. So I don't want to say like I was a non-believer. I definitely was a believer, but I didn't know if it was just kind of adding to it. So when we got in there, you know, nothing weird. Like, you know, you have your area, I guess you would say, a waiting area, where they take you into different sorts of groups. And back at that time, there was only one house that you could go through. Now I think they have two. But so we kind of started this journey. The tour guide took us, and immediately my husband started feeling lightheaded. Now at the time, I didn't know what I was walking into for the museum, so I did kind of make sure that I had some sort of protection on me, just because that's how I was raised, to kind of always protect yourself and surround yourself with some sort of white light. So that is what I did. And I brought some stones with me. I was wearing like a romper kind of situation, so they were in my pocket. And so upon entering, like, I had a feeling like I was protected, I was fine. So when we started the tour and started going through each of the rooms, my husband started getting extremely lightheaded and kind of holding on to me, not really knowing what was going on. Now, he is such a non-believer, so this behavior is kind of out of the ordinary. He didn't really know what was going on, and I had just said like, oh, well, here, like, have one of my stones, like, no big deal, like, I have 4, so you can have 2. Because obviously by him passing out in the museum would mean that I had to leave. So even though I didn't know what to expect, I was still like, well, I don't want to just leave, like, we just paid to come in here. So we'll start there. He was already feeling a little bit lightheaded, and after he kind of calmed down, he decided that in each room he was actually going to stand at the doorway and not go like individually in each of the rooms, just because he didn't know if something was messing with him because he was a non-believer, or if he was just having some sort of experience that he was stressing himself out. So as we kind of did this, you know, I'm trying to look, I'm also worried about him. Nothing was really happening at first. I obviously was nervous, so, you know, my stomach was kind of in knots about everything, but never once was I automatically like feeling something, if that makes sense. So fast forward to when we're about halfway through the tour, so we're about 45 minutes in, and we go into the doll room with I don't even want to say her name out loud, but P-E-G-G-Y. It was her room with the spirit box. So going into that, okay, don't know why it cut off, but we're just gonna bypass that. So we went in this room, and, you know, initially they were telling us to make sure to say hi and be respectful, not to mock, because there had been instances of people passing out in the room, of people being pushed in the room. So I didn't want any of that to happen to me. So I had said like, hi, you know, we're just here to look, whatever the tour guide kind of suggested us saying. And so I was front row. Had I known what was going to transpire, I probably wouldn't have been front row. I was kind of like pushing and weaving my way towards the front because I wanted to see her. And looking back now, it's just not something I would have done, or something I would ever do again. So I was front row, and the spirit box, you know, if you don't know what that is, it's just a wave of white noise, and every once in a while you'll get a word that kind of comes out that you'll hear. And so No one knew except for my husband. The tour guide didn't know. No one knew that I was actually 3 months pregnant. We had just found out about a week before we went on the trip, and still decided to go because it was not like we were doing anything super treacherous that would affect it. So that information was not shared with anyone. And as I'm standing there, we hear, you know, her voice come through, or someone's voice come through, and they said hi back to all of us. I'm standing there just kind of looking at her, listening to the tour guide and listening to what stories, but the tour guide was giving her a minute to kind of go through different frequencies and speak. So it was kind of quiet, like in the room. And she says, stones. So the tour guide's kind of confused. Oh, not sure really what that means, why she would say that. Like, what do you mean? She's asking her to elaborate on why she's saying stones. And she says it again. And she says, stones, pocket. And I knew I had stones in my pocket, but obviously the tour guide didn't, and the rest of the group didn't. And so she was asking everybody, like, I'm not sure what that means, you know, does anybody have stones in their pocket? And everyone kind of looked around confused. Again, I did not say anything because at this point I was kind of already a little bit freaked out that I didn't want to be in the forefront of, like, yeah, it's me, I have stones in my pocket. Like, no, thank you. So I was just quiet, and she's like, who has stones in their pocket? She asked her. And she says, the baby. And she's like, the baby, and she's looking around the room. She goes, there's no babies in here. And she says, front. And she's looking at, you know, the tour guide's looking around at me, or not at me, but like at us, and looking around, and she's like confused. And I could tell she kept looking at me because I was the only one not responding, that I feel like to this day she knew it was me, but didn't want to make me more uncomfortable than I already was. And so, you know, she had said, well, you know, whoever it is, they don't want to come forward. So, you know, if anybody else wants to try and talk to her, you can. Well, I wasn't. So, you know, other people were asking her questions like, how old are you? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. And I kind of like weaved myself back. Sorry, my phone's like wobbly. Back out of the room because I was thinking, like, I don't want to be in this anymore. Now I'm scared, and now I feel like somehow she knows me personally that I didn't even think that I invited. So at this point I was afraid, and so I kind of exited the room, let them finish, and I was talking to my husband, and I was telling him, like, I'm pretty sure that, like, she knows. Like, she kept saying specific things about me, and of course he was like, I don't know, like, I don't know, I don't want anything to do with it, I don't know. And I was like, I don't know, but like, good thing it's almost done, because, you know, and then we'll just go home or go back to the hotel and not stress about it. And so as we were walking out, you know, she tells us all to say bye. So even though I'm at the doorway, I still acknowledge it to say bye, and I said bye, and along with the rest of the group, not just me individually. And she says, bye, stones. And I'm like, I just feel this massive pit in my stomach. And I keep walking and kind of like go with my husband. And we are walking next to one of the next room, or a couple of rooms that we're going into. I don't know if it was like the first, second, or third room we went to next, but it was the room with the Dybbuk box. And while we're walking to the Dybbuk box, the lady, the tour guide, you know, closes the door, because we all said bye to her, and she starts closing the door as we're all kind of walking, and you hear her say it again, like, bye, stones. And I can hear through the door because the box is so loud, like, because it's white noise, that I could hear her. And I was like stressed. And I'm like, there's no way this is a coincidence. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. So we start walking, and I'm kind of like trying to ease up on it and just think that maybe it is a coincidence. Like, maybe she was talking to somebody else. Like, I don't know. And we start walking, like I said, into these next areas, and the tour guide goes, "Oh, are these anyone's stones?" My husband checks his pockets. All of his stones are there that I gave him. Mine, nowhere to be found. Not in my pocket. I had one in my pocket, one in my bra. And for my girls that know bras, that sucker was not coming out. There was 0 in my bra, 0 in my pocket. I don't know how, to this day, how it came out. It would be crazy if they slipped out, because it was tight. My bra was tight. So I don't know. And so I pick them up and I put them in my pocket. I didn't put them back in my bra, but I put them in my pocket, and I was like, "Oh, thanks." And the tour guide kind of like looked at me with this look like, "Oh, is she talking about you?" And she didn't ask, but I think she knew. And so, you know, we make our way back to everything, and fast forward to the end of the tour. You know, we went in the gift shop. I saw that they had sage and Palo Santo sticks, and I picked some up because at this point I was afraid, and I knew all of my stuff to cleanse with was at home and not here. Like, why would I bring that to Las Vegas? Like, so I picked some up and we went back to the hotel. We were talking about it, and similar to the video that I stitched, or that I'm going to try to stitch, her exhaustion on how she felt, 1000%. We were both exhausted. Felt like we had the biggest headache of all time. Just wild that we were so exhausted. And so we get back to the hotel. Everything seems fine. We go downstairs to the casino. We go and just kind of hang around, even though we're tired. We're just kind of trying to get some new memories in our mind because we're scared. Like, there's no other way to put it. We were scared, and I was shook still by it. And so we were just kind of doing things to kind of fill our time before we're going to bed. And so that's exactly what we did. And we went to dinner. We had ice cream. We had everything. And for the next 5 days, it could be a full week, it could be a full 7 days. At this point, I don't remember, but I remember it was like a week long. I had nightmares every single night, nonstop. The same reoccurring dream of someone, this lady, and I couldn't even really picture her actual face, but I knew it was a woman based on her hair. And every single night she would scream in my face in my dream, like this close. And every single night it would happen, and I would wake up and I would be parched and sweat and stressed out, and I didn't know how to stop it. And so finally I had asked my mom after, yeah, like I said, it was probably about a week, and called her crying, and I said, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what I did wrong. I thought I was protecting myself. These dreams aren't happening to my husband. They're just happening to me, and I don't know what to do with it." And so she had came over. We had did an egg cleanse, which is what I had recommended to her as well. That was talking about this originally. We had did saging, poly sticks, and overall just prayer and saying that we don't want any sort of negative attachment. We're sorry for invading your space if you felt like we invaded it. And so the next few days that followed it, I remember I did have it one more time, and the rest of the following days I didn't have it anymore. Still to this day I haven't had it. So it was a very startling experience, one that definitely shaped the way that I kind of go about the paranormal world. Before, I used to be very careless and naive and just watch all the shows and like, oh my gosh, I wish that something would happen to me, like, and be just so, I guess you would say, vulnerable, just so open to every single thing. And even though I still am, I don't ask for things to happen to me, because I realize that this world that we don't see and we don't know what it looks like and the dangers behind it is such a bigger world than we think. And so as much as I love that we were able to experience all of the really other cool things and the other cool artifacts. It was extremely traumatic, and I don't wish any experience like that on anyone. And yeah, so I don't usually talk about it often, but I feel like after seeing her video, it brought back a lot of memory of what that experience was like. And so hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, so I actually have two really funny stories that go on perfectly with this. I'm gonna start off with the least scary one first, because like I know people are gonna call me like over dramatic for this one, but like whatever. Okay, so there was this one time I couldn't sleep. Like I was in my bed, right? And I sleep next to my dog. And me not sleeping isn't exactly out of the norm. Like I normally don't get sleep. It's like it was fine, it was normal. So I'm trying to get some shut-eye, and my dog suddenly gets up. So I look over at her, and she's looking out my window, and my window leads to the backyard. Right next to my window is a door that leads from the backyard to my living room. So my dog starts shaking, and she's looking out my window, and I didn't think anything of it because she really gets scared of everything. Anyways, so then my room starts vibrating, and I wasn't really scared at first. Like, I don't know, I didn't know what that was. Like, I haven't experienced this before. Like, I genuinely didn't feel anything. I just literally like sat there, and I could feel like these vibrations. Like I didn't feel any emotions. Like I didn't care until I started hearing these like really long, dragged out scraping noises and banging noises, and that was when I actually started to panic. Like that's when this switch turned on in my head, and it was like, oh my god, what if someone's trying to break in? I was thinking to myself, I was like, what if my dog could smell somebody outside and she knew that something bad could have happened? So I was pretty scared, right? And it took me like a long time to actually like convince myself to do something about it. Like at first I was like really scared, and I was like, oh my god, should I look outside the window? Oh my god, no, I'm scared. What if they have a gun? So once I got the courage to actually do something, I got up and I went to my mom. I was like, hey, I think someone's trying to break in. And I must have been crying or something, because she got all panicky just from looking at my face. Like she didn't even hear what I was going to say, and she got all panicky. She was like, oh my god, what's wrong? Mind you, when I walked out of my bedroom, the noise had completely stopped. The noise was gone. So I was like, oh crap, they're in. And I went and told my mom. I was like, I think someone's trying to break in, or I think they might have just broken in. Like, I don't know what to do. I would have called the cops, but I just genuinely didn't know what to do. Because what if it's not someone breaking in? Like, what if it's just like, I don't know. Like, what if I'm imagining things? Like, I don't know what to do. So my mom goes in the living room. I kind of tiptoe behind her, kind of scared. And there's nothing there. Like, we look behind the curtains, there's literally nothing there. We look at my window, there's nothing by my window. We check the cameras. Tell me why. The camera didn't pick up any sound, any movement, nothing. So my mom goes, maybe you're imagining things, maybe you were dreaming. I was like, you know what, maybe, you're right. But when I get back into my room, tell me why my dog is still shaking and my dog is still genuinely terrified. Okay, so this next story, people actually find scary. I know there are going to be people judging me for this one, but, like, I was genuinely scared. I'm not going to take anything from anyone, because I was terrified. There is this one time I went up north for this church retreat, and I live in Michigan for people who don't know me. And so nothing exciting really happens. Like, I wasn't expecting anything to happen. So the day kind of goes by really fast, because it took us a really long time to get there in the first place. And at this point, it's nighttime, and the stars are out. Like, it's really pretty outside. Like, you can see the Milky Road. And I was a really, really, really big astronomy nerd. So this was really big for me. So we're sitting by this little campfire, little bonfire thing. We're having our own little moment. We're roasting marshmallows, making s'mores. It was pretty normal, right? Pretty normal outing, right? And then the priest suddenly goes, hey, I have a story I would like to tell you guys. So I'm immediately interested. So is like everybody else in that group, because our priest is known for his insanely good stories, right? So we're all waiting to hear what he's going to say, and we're all pretty excited about it. And he says, I have a ghost story. So at this point, I'm already like, this is probably gonna be something fake, but whatever. And this was the story he tells us. So apparently, on the very same grounds that we were sitting at, we have the saint relics of two children, the children of Jerusalem, two of those kids who were martyred for being Christian. So we have literally their relics, or basically their cremated bodies, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in the church that we have at that location. So I honestly, like, that part I believed, because we have a lot of saint relics. Like, we're a Coptic Orthodox church. We have saint relics. So that part I was like, okay, nothing scary about that. But then he goes, oh, I brought these two Chaldean boys up here to this very same location so we could have some kind of time alone away from all the distractions because they wanted to convert to Orthodoxy. That part also seemed normal, right? Then he goes, I asked them after the first night, how did you guys sleep? And one of them says, oh, I slept very fine. The other one goes, I didn't really sleep. I heard children laughing all night. Children laughing where? We are on 45 acres of land with nothing but trees around us. To get to that location, you have to go on this really musty dirt road with literally nothing but trees everywhere. There are no children. There are no neighbors. So I didn't believe him. Well, I kind of believed him, but like I thought that Chaldean boy must have been lying or something. I thought something wasn't adding up, you know, like I did not believe that this actually happened. But anyways, that's not the point. Later on that night, I decided to take advantage of the fact that the stars were out and I really, really, really wanted to see the stars. So I asked one of my friends, I was like, hey, how about we go out and I can show you all the constellations? I was a really, really, really big astronomy nerd back in middle school and I can point some constellations out to you. So my friend says sure, and we're just gonna call my friend F. So I'm literally sitting there pointing out the constellations with my little nerd self, having a little nerd moment, saying, right, there's the Big Dipper, there's the Little Dipper. I know, I'm so smart, you guys. When suddenly, I see B's older brother and B's older brother's friend running up the hill looking terrified. So I'm confused, and we go over to ask them, like, hey, what happened? So B's older brother goes, we just heard God talking to us. And his friend is like, oh my God, you guys will never believe what we heard. And suddenly they both say, we heard children laughing. The moment they said that, tell me why all the cars in the vicinity go off at the same exact time. Like, that's not a coincidence. Including the old bus that we came here on. And some of you might be thinking, what does that have to do with anything? That old musty bus needs 3 keys to work properly. 3 keys because of how old and musty dusty crusty it is. I doubt it has a working horn. And I know you guys might be thinking, but Selena, you just said there's no neighbors. What do you mean cars? Well, obviously, we got there somehow. We had the servants that came with us, and we had the bus we came on, and the priest, he came with us too. We obviously had cars there. How did all of them go off at the same time? I genuinely don't know. But anyways, I obviously got scared. I dropped my phone and ran inside. I didn't even realize I dropped my phone. I realized later. But we got inside, and people obviously heard me screaming, and they were like, oh my God, what's going on? Only a few people believed us. And those few people were my friends, B's brother's friends, and the priest. Oh, and some of the servants, but whatever. People genuinely thought that we were making this up to get attention. And honestly, I can't say I blame them, because I didn't believe the priest either when he told us about that story. But anyways, though, when we told him about what happened, he literally laughed, and he says, oh my goodness, every time we come here, something interesting happens. Like, no, that's not funny, that's terrifying, I was terrified, that is not funny.
Nope, I'll go first. So, this is a long one, so y'all strap in. Get some tea. Loose leaf. And let's talk a minute. So, last month, I went to go help a friend of mine price some artwork because I am an artist. That's what I do for a living. So what better person to price artwork than an actual artist who does it on the daily as a job? Well, so my friend Robbo passed away. His art's for sale. We're trying to figure out what to do. All good. Well, while I was going around her house, we came across a few objects that she was just like, I don't know what to do with these. You can have them. And I was like, cool. I love that. Well, I came across this guy, rounded the corner, and this was glinting in the light. This beautiful, gorgeous, ornate little brass vase. And I'm kind of a sucker for antiques. I like old things. And she goes, I don't know what to do with this, but you can have this. And I said, well, thank you. I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. It says, made in Italy. It's gorgeous. So I take it home. It's in the back of my car. And after the whole experience of helping her price and helping her do all of these things, I was feeling really tired, like unusually tired. Kind of like all of my energy had been sucked out of me. Sort of like somebody had pulled my plug. Like I'm feeling today. I'm a little under the weather today. So somebody pulled my plug. And I remember talking to my guy, Matthew, and I was like, gosh, you know, I'm tired. I think I'm going to go to bed early. Well, we went to bed early. We're at his apartment. I wake up about 3 a.m. And I'm like, shit, I don't have my bottle. Don't have my bottle. And I have this thing with me every single day. And if I don't have it, I feel weird. And I don't know if that's just me being ADHD and just needing the one thing that gives me comfort. Yeah, I didn't have it. I was like, shit, I left it in the car. So I'm like, okay, well, fuck. It's 3 in the morning. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna get it out of my car. Not thinking that I could have just grabbed a glass and just poured water into the glass and got a glass of water and drank it. Nope, needed my bottle. Well, got out the door, and mind you, I'm still feeling tired, still feeling like somebody has just leached all the energy out of me. It was the weirdest thing. And I walked past, he has these stairs, and then like a little tiny garden area, like right across from them, just out in front of his apartment. Well, I walked past the garden area, and as I get directly past the garden area, I hear this voice, and it comes from nowhere, and it just says, excuse me, can you help me find home? And I was like, immediately, I'm like, who, what was that? Well, I quickly found out what that was. I looked over at my car, which was parked, not quite in the parking lot, but on the side of the driveway, and in the street behind my car was a woman standing with long dark hair. She was wearing all black, and she was just standing in the road. And after I heard that voice, I saw her turn, and she just started coming toward me like this, and I went, nope. Me being in my robe, I grabbed it tight, and I ran the frick inside, because oh my god, what the hell was that? Ran inside, locked the door, and I went and I peeked out the window, and I'm like, what the hell? Nobody was outside. Not a soul in the street. I went and looked out of Matt's window to get a different perspective. Nobody outside. So, next day, mind you, I'm unloading my car. I take this out, and I set it on the porch. And my friend had texted me, and she goes, hey, I know you contacted me last night, because that was one thing I did, was like, Dion, what did you give me? You know, like, what exactly is going on? Well, I just wanted to say, I know who that girl was in the middle of the street. And I went, okay, well, who was it? And she sent me a picture. Her name was Michelle. Michelle was Robbo's muse, and Robbo was also an artist. And the way he painted her, it was always like she had light around her, such an incredible light around her. And it was so beautiful, the way he captured her. And when she showed me the picture, I went, yes, that is absolutely the person I saw standing behind my car. So, all I have to say is that the encounters with spirits and ghosts are not always bad or negative. Sometimes it's just somebody trying to find home because they've lost it.
Okay, so when I was probably about 18, I had met a guy that I started really liking, and this was after a really bad breakup. And I wanted to be with him, and I did not know that he was abusive initially. So there was a time that he punched me in the face, and my whole face was like swollen and black and blue, was pretty beat up. He did this while my then 2-year-old daughter was in my arms. So that same night, he came back to my house and went to sleep like nothing happened, like everything was cool. And I was seething at this point, and I was going to take him out. So I had this very large knife that I had already hid under my pillow, and I literally pulled the knife out and got ready to stab him right in his carotid artery. And at that very, very moment, my closet door, so I was on the 3rd floor of this house. We had a house in East Cleveland, Ohio, big, beautiful house, older, you know. And in the room, the carpet was so thick that like the closet door, you had to literally force it closed or open because the carpet wouldn't allow it to just easily move. So this closet door literally closed on its own on this carpet as I was getting ready to stab this man in his sleep. I probably shouldn't have said that because it's probably going to get taken off. Hopefully not, but that's what I was going to do. And yeah, that's one of my ghost stories. I have a couple, but that's one that still blows my mind to this day. How old am I? Some 30 something years later. And when I think about it, I'm still like, wow, there was literally something else in that room that stopped me from doing what I was getting ready to do by closing this closet door that wouldn't have otherwise closed unless something or someone was actually pushing it. So that's my scary ghost story because I was terrified after that, and I definitely put that knife away and just laid there. So yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable,
so
but is entirely
this was probably around 2015, 2016, so a while ago now. And I don't have any proof at all of this because I was home alone, and yeah. So this was a smaller home. It was maybe about built in 1994, so not even a super old house, but I know it had a history. So because we bought it as a repo and we had to do a lot of work on it, and yeah, so it had a history. So yeah, we were living in this house, and it was while I was going through the early parts of my kind of like spiritual awakening and all that good stuff. So I was doing a lot of stuff that I was not properly prepared for, and things like that. And we did have some experiences in that house, so saw multiple like shadows kind of flitting about. We had so many experiences in the nighttime. Both of my kids, my spouse and I both would have these experiences of seeing figures in our bedroom. And it gets even creepier than that at times, but very rarely were these things like actually causing me to feel fear, okay? Mostly like they would cause just like this curiosity, or I would sense these things, but I wouldn't sense like malintent or maliciousness or evil or anything like that. Okay, so I want to stress that. Like, I don't think there were demons and things like. Anyways, but there was this one specific experience that just. So I was home alone, and we had this hallway, and at the end of the hallway that leads into our living room, we had this shelf, and we kind of got a little carried away. Had a stack of just papers and bills and stuff like that piled on this shelf. And so it's important to note that at the time, like, all the windows were closed, the entry doors were closed, and we've never had a problem with air, burst of air or anything like that. And I haven't had anything major like this happen before or after. Okay, so I'm walking down the hall and I come into the living room, so I pass by this shelf, and I'm not running, I'm just walking a normal pace, okay? And I've walked by this pile of papers countless times up to that point, and never had an issue. This one time, I walk by, and immediately after I pass by that shelf and the pile of papers, they don't flitter off, okay? They don't flitter off. They are thrown from, so a stack of papers like this thick, okay, is thrown, and the stack was thicker than that, and were thrown off of the shelf and smacked the wall behind me, okay? So crossed the entirety of the hallway, which isn't major. It was probably 48, 50 inches wide, okay? So you're kind of like standard hallway width, but I heard, like, it was an audible smack, okay? It was like you took a handful of papers and threw them against the wall. Like, there was this smack of papers that hit the wall behind me, and I didn't feel or see anything in that moment, but yeah, that was the major kind of like incident, and so yeah, and around that time, like, we would have cabinet doors opening and closing and things like that, but this was the major thing that happened, was this stack of papers, just like, I heard it, it smacked against the wall behind me. Couldn't explain it, and still can't, so like I've always maintained this level of skepticalness about everything. I was absolutely a skeptic. Even when I considered myself religious, I was a super skeptic of, like, psychics, spirituality, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, like, I experimented, like, I ran past this stack of papers trying to recreate this event. I opened up the doors, the entryway doors and the windows and stuff, trying to recreate this to see if I could get a sudden burst of air to cause that. I was trying to cause something like that, and I could not get anything close to similar results. I couldn't even get the papers to just even flitter or blow off the shelf at all. I couldn't get a single paper to blow off that shelf at all when I was trying to. So, yeah, that's my story.
Okay, here's a ghost story that's completely true. Growing up, I was the youngest of 7. Our house was like super haunted. Our grandma raised us, so we stayed with her. And she used to tell us that our land was was built on a burial ground. So therefore, that's why it was haunted. We used to have all type of things happening. Kids running up and down the hallways. We had a shadow in our house that always wore a top hat. It was like a guy with a big top hat. And like, out of everything, I believe that was like one of the things that me and my siblings were scared of the most. I'll say my younger siblings, that's closer in age to me. So one night we had a kind of a sleepover. It was some cousins. My grandma had a California king bed, and we all slept in there. And in that room, you had 3 doors in that room. We had a room beside the bed, which led to another bedroom. We had a room that was like across from the bedroom that like go down the hallway and like to the other side of the house. And then we had another door that you can see into the kitchen. But when you look into the kitchen, all you could really see was like the refrigerator, and then you could see the door to the living room. So it was me, my sister that's above me, and then my sister that's above her. So we're all in the bed, and it's with our cousins, and we're all just in there. It was late night, and we was just talking and laughing and stuff. And then my sister, that's like the oldest of the two that was with us, she's staring into the distance, and she's like, "Hey y'all, did y'all see that?" And we was like, come on, man, quit playing, because we already scared of the house, because like all the haunted stuff that goes on there. So she's like, "No, seriously, did y'all see that?" And we was like, "Yo, like, quit playing." So she's like, "No, wait, be quiet, be quiet." So we all just like got quiet, and she told us to look in the kitchen, and when we looked in the kitchen, we didn't see anything. So once again, we thought she was playing. And she was like, "No, I'm like dead serious. There's like something in the kitchen." So we all was just quiet, and then we kept looking in the kitchen. And so we were looking, and then it was just a shadow, but a head poked from beside the refrigerator. And we all saw it, we all guessed, and started screaming, and like, so we're freaking out. And then we look again, and like it scoots back, so it's pretty much playing hide and seek with us. So we look, we all scream, it goes back. It looks up again, we scream. It looks up again, and then it strikes out towards the bed. So now we're all screaming, we all done gathered around in a corner towards the wall, because like, oh my God, like it's coming towards us. And it jumps towards us and jumps on the bed. And then when it hit the bed, we felt nothing, like nothing at all. So like we was just terrified, and that's just like one of like the things that's happened to us that's like haunted in our house. And there's a lot of stories to go on with that.
When I was 13, I used to go to my friend's house and hang out during the day, and I didn't really notice anything weird. But I was kind of like a shy, introverted kid, so I didn't really spend the night places too often. But I spent the night at her house one time, and she had an older sister who was a little bit of a rabble-rouser, if you will, and she stayed out after curfew. So, I mean, we fell asleep, everything was fine, but the way this house was set up is there was like a big loft area that had these sliding wooden doors upstairs, so like it didn't block out any sound at all. So when her sister got home, I remember it was like, 2 or 3 in the morning, it was super late, and so her mom was like yelling at her downstairs, so we all woke up, they were like arguing. So I know I was awake when this happened. I was in the top bunk. I don't know if my friend was still asleep during this part or not, but so I was just like staring, because when people are arguing at your friend's house, it's like super awkward. So I was just kind of like staring ahead, and I was looking at the closet, but like in a way that you're just like spacing out looking at it, and then the closet door, it's a sliding door, and it's closed, and all of a sudden a light turns on in this closet. It's like a real soft light, but it's enough to where it like illuminates the cracks of the doors. So my friend was either like asleep still or facing the other way, because there's no way that she wouldn't have seen this. And then the door like silently slid open, and then out walked this like translucent figure wearing a nightgown. And this figure was like completely like ghost white and bald and didn't have any facial features at all. And then it just kind of like stepped forward and walked over to the dresser, and then turned around to look in the mirror, and then I blinked, and then it was gone. And so then at that point I freaked out. I like yelled for my friend, and I was like, "Please turn on the light." And so then she got up and turned on the light, and I told her like what I had seen. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I see her all the time." And I was like, "What the fuck? Like, hello?" And she looked like a kid, like just like looked like one of us, like the same age. And I wonder if that's like why the next part of the story happened as well. So at my friend's, like, it was a big deal birthday. It was like, must have been her 13th birthday. She got to have like this big party. There was a lot of people there. And again, I was just like this shy kid, so I was like, just hanging out, but I was kind of like nervous. And we did this big like group thing, and this was like in the 90s, by the way, when there was like inflatable furniture was like a huge deal. It was like right around the late 90s, early 2000s. So she had this pink see-through inflatable chair, and it was so cool. And we were like, oh my gosh, wow, that's straight out of Delia's. And we all sat in this circle, and we were trying to talk to this ghost, because my friend was like, yeah, we saw her the other night. Like, my friend here, she saw her too. Like, I'm not crazy. Like, I didn't invent it. So like, they were like asking us to like, okay, talk to her, bring her out here again. And so like everybody was sitting in a circle. There was like probably at least 15 of us. And we put the inflatable chair in the middle of the circle. And we were like, okay, like after a while of trying and like, couldn't get anything to happen, we were like, okay, if you want to join us, to come hang out with us, sit in this chair. And there was a second, and then all of a sudden, like, kind of like when someone sits on an air mattress, like it changes, right? It changes shape and you can hear the sound. And that's exactly what happened to this pink inflatable chair in the middle of the circle. And we all screamed and ran from the room. And honestly, I feel bad about it now because we asked her to come hang out with us and she tried to. And then we freaked out and left. Like, to this day, I feel bad about it.
Okay, so I don't usually do things like this, but since a very young age, sorry, I'm like checking in my kitchen, it's literally just like a little ghost, like, anyways, I hung that there on purpose, so I don't want to freaking myself out, but I just watched another story and I'm like, I got the heebies, but, this is something that I've told so many people and they like don't even know how to respond, they don't even say anything after I'm done, but like, basically, I was very, very young. I had heard stories about like monsters under the bed, stuff like that. I had watched a lot of shows, there's like real monsters or whatever, and they live in like sewage, they live in the creepy places, and I was like, okay. And my mom, I asked her if there's like any like monsters under the bed that like have a name. And she said, well, people call monster under the bed boogeyman, but he's not real. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, I was trying to figure out what was going on because my cat, she specifically has green eyes that would glow a specific hue of scarlet red around them when she was under my bed. And when I called her, she would come out. Her name was Princess. And I'd be like, Princess, come on, you're scaring me. And she'd be like, me, me. And she'd come out. She was a beautiful, amazing, sweet cat. One of the sweetest cats I've ever met, still to this day. Besides the point. But sometimes I'd call to her and there'd be these little beady red eyes. They were like, I think about like that big. And they were like this far apart and they'd come from under my bed. And I'd call Princess over and over again and then they get closer to me. And that's it. They wouldn't like, Princess wouldn't come out, then mew mew, nothing. And I just jump and get back onto my bed because immediately like full body chills like I'm having right now because I remember the stuff that was going on. And it would keep happening. And then one day I saw like, it was this weird, like kind of torn up green, like kind of mummified looking figure with the red eyes because it was a little bit like, it was almost nighttime, but not really. And then it saw that I saw it and it turned to me and I immediately freaked out. I immediately ran to my mom's room, chills up the wazoo. I immediately ran to my mom's room and I'm like, I think the boogeyman just tried to attack me. Like, I think the boogeyman is actually under my bed. Like, I think he's real and I think he actually tried to get me. And my mom's like, there's no way he's real. You were probably just like really scared in the moment and it'll be fine. Just go to bed. I'll never forget that. And then another instance of that happened with the red eyes. And it was darker out, and then I felt like there was something like reaching out to me, and it kind of looked like it, but I was a kid, so it was kind of like dark, so I couldn't really register it, and so one day in the broad daylight, I think it was either the day after the hand reaching out thing, or it was like a day or two, or it was like a couple hours after. It was like within a day or two after that happened. I was sitting on my bed. I was drawing because I draw, like I doodle, like, you know, I've done it since I was a kid. I have an overactive imagination. I do that. And I was doing it on my big, I finally got a big like sketchbook, and I was like doodling. I was so happy. I was like, yes, oh my God, I'm gonna have like places to actually put my art. And I feel like I was 8 or 9 around this time, and my ankles were dangling like on my bed because I was a kid, so like the bottom of the bed was like here, and my ankles were like that, and I couldn't touch the floor yet. And I was just doodling away. I was like giggling to myself. I was so happy. And then out of nowhere, something grabs my ankle with the hottest, most fiery, most painful scorn and like feeling I've ever felt in my entire life. And I just screamed at the top of my lungs. I absolutely just screamed at the top of my fucking lungs. Pardon my French, I'm sorry, TikTok, but I just screamed at the top of my lungs because I've never felt anything like that. It felt like someone got like a freaking, like, you know, those things that they brand cows with and put it on my ankle. Like, that's all that I could imagine it felt like. I mean, that's all I could attest to what it feels like, because that's how like crazy and sudden it was, and painful and hot. And I looked down, and it was that hand that I was scared of the other day. And it like, I still am shocked to this day. It's been like almost like 20 years now, and I'm still like, and it left a big scar on the side of my ankle from where it, like, I guess it dug into me and burned me. I still have a piece of the scar to this day. I've shown people, I've told people, like, I believe in demons because I'm pretty sure that one attacked me when I was like 8 or 9, and I was just sitting in my bed in broad daylight. I still have a piece of the scar on my ankle. No one knows what to say to me about this. No one knows what to do. No one even knows what to think. My fiance, like, I've told it about this, and he told me, like, I cannot even imagine how that must have felt, especially being that young. And I honestly don't even know what I would do or what I would say. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but a demon, like, and I'm like, yes, there's no other explanation to that. Like, it wasn't my cat. I know for a fact because I'd call my cat's name and it wouldn't come, and it wouldn't and it fucking got me. It fucking got me. And to this day, I don't know. I don't know what that was. I don't know. Like, all I can attest to, it was like a spiteful demon. Like, I know that, like, I'm not afraid of demons at the same time, but like, that was like another type of like being an entity that I really want no part of, even to this day. And I'll never get over that. Like, it's obviously traumatizing because of the pain, but like at the same time, like, no one believed me. My mom kept saying it wasn't real. And I kept telling her, like, it's under my bed, it's under my bed, it's under my bed, it's under my bed. And I'll never forget that. And I don't know if anyone will believe me now. Hardly anyone really believes me or understands what I'm saying when I talk about it, because I don't even know if I fully have ever grasped that in all the years that I've known and had this experience. But I just wanted to finally share it publicly because, like, I don't know if anyone's had a similar experience, and hopefully I'm not the only one at this point. But if I am, then I don't know. I don't know why I was the unlucky one, but I'm not hoping that anyone has also gone through it, because that's fucking awful, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But if anyone has, I would like to know, so I feel less crazy and alone and misunderstood, because I still don't know. I still really don't know how to grasp it, and I don't know if anyone can grasp it either. So it's just really crazy, and I still can't believe I still have the scar to this day. And I'm 25. It's been like 17 years. It's almost been 2 decades, and I'm still like, there it is, where that entity, demon, whatever you want to call it, grabbed me and fucking burned me. So yeah, that's my story. Have a good night or day, wherever you are. If you've had a similar experience, please let me know, because I don't know. I don't want to be alone in this.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely.
Okay, I have a creepy story. Whenever I was married to my ex-husband, we went to bed like any other normal night. I locked the doors, I checked the windows, and put the alarm on, right? So it's about 2 or 3 a.m., and I hear somebody clearly open the back door. I heard every twist, turn, and click of the doorknob. So I said to myself, okay, that's it. Brace yourself. And so I'm in bed pretending to be asleep, but then I look over to my ex-husband and he's sleeping like a baby. Anyway, this entity or whatever it was, and this all happened super fast, right? Like in a split few seconds, came into our bedroom. The door was open because we didn't have kids, so like we just kept the doors open pretty much all the time. And I see it coming directly over him, and I know it's gonna attack him. So I immediately said, "Depart from me in Jesus' name." And it did. Like it just went away. And I'm over here questioning myself, like, did that just happen? Like, I sat upright in the bed and I thought about it for I don't know how long, not forever, but I was like, that was real. This was not a dream. I'm literally touching myself and thinking, what in the world? That was so creepy. And so I eventually, about, I don't know, maybe an hour or so later, I fall back asleep and I wake up before my ex-husband does. And I'm just waiting for him to wake up because, like, I'm going to tell him. And I did tell him. And he actually said thank you. And he didn't question it because, of course, like, why would I make this shit up? Anyway, yeah, that's my creepy story. And I do have others, but that's the first one I thought of. So, anyway, ciao.
Okay, so in my house growing up, my childhood bedroom was attached to the attic. It was in my closet, and there was like this little wooden door on the other side behind my clothes. And when you opened it, you couldn't actually see into the attic. You could only see up the stairs that would take you to the attic. So I never messed with it. I just left it alone. I was like, I don't want to, this is too much. So I would barricade it. I would just leave the escape ladder for a fire in front of it. So I knew that if it was opened, I would hear it. And for a very long time, I always felt like there was a presence in my room. I didn't really know what was going on. It never felt like I was truly alone, and I was an only child of only children. So like your girl was alone all the time. And I eventually moved my room around to the point where I had this little desk that was like a triangle style desk, so it went straight into the corner. And one night, I woke up in the middle of the night to my bunny rabbit banging against his crate, which he would do almost every night at almost the same exact time, 3:34 a.m. And one night I look over under this desk and there's this little boy under there. And I can tell he's not real, but like I don't really know why I can tell he's not real. It's just maybe he was just like fainter. I just could tell he wasn't a real person. And I wasn't scared. He wasn't scary. He was just in this little like ball kind of sitting under my desk, and he just looked sad. He just looked sad. And I mean, I didn't love that he was there, but I really didn't mind it too much, maybe because I was half asleep. So I went back to bed, woke up, he was gone, obviously, and I just kind of I went through my day, whatever. And every so often, I would end up waking up to my bunny at the same exact time, and he would just be under this desk in my bedroom. And my parents didn't believe in ghosts, and I didn't really tell anyone about it because I was just like, this is weird. What if I'm dreaming? I don't know what's really going on. That wasn't a conversation that my family and I had about ghosts, whatever. And I just kind of let it be. But as I got older, he never really went away. And I would always just get really creeped out in my house as I got older, and my family never understood why. Like, I didn't really like for it to be dark. I had a nightlight for years, like well into my teenage years, and it was just always because I knew there were other presence in the house. And he was, I'm going to tell you how he was dressed because it's going to play a role in a second. He looked like a little chimney sweep from Mary Poppins. He had the whole attire, the hat. He had what looked like soot on him. And I just thought it was because he lived in the attic upstairs. And that's how I justified it. And I just kind of was like, whatever, didn't really talk to him, didn't really converse with him, let it be. I moved out of the house once I went to college and became an adult, bought my house, moved out, and my dad lived in the house last by himself. He was working on selling the house and told me one night that he had a dream. And it was really weird because he was almost being shown the house by someone who he had never seen there, who he didn't know, who was a little kid, and he didn't really understand the importance of this kid, but this kid just wanted to show him around the house. And he was like, it was really daunting because I woke up and he was just kind of looking at me from the end of my bed. And I walked around with him. He didn't say anything. And then we just kind of went on our way, and that was it. And I was like, okay, so tell me more about this little boy. Because mind you, I had never told my family this little boy, what he looked like, anything like that. I just said that I felt like there was something in the house all the time. That's all I said. And he proceeds to tell me that it looks like he has like suspenders on, and like he's from like early 20s, mid, or not early 20s, early 1900s, mid 1900s, and that he was like kind of dirty. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Is there any chance he was wearing like a little hat like a chimney sweep would? And he goes, yeah, it kind of did look like one of those hats. And I was like, interesting. Okay. And was he like almost covered in soot, like maybe he was a chimney sweep? And he goes, yeah, he was pretty dirty. And I was like, that's really interesting. And this was a boy, right? Like he was probably like 8, 9. And he was like, yeah, that's exactly about how old I would have pegged him for. And I was like, yeah, that boy has been living in my bedroom for almost my entire life. And you got to meet him, I guess, because you're the only one there. And he was like, no, no, no. And I was like, yeah, he showed up in your dreams. Probably around 3 a.m. is when he came and popped by, because I know that you go to work at 4:30 a.m. He goes, yeah, I was awake for probably like an hour before my alarm went off for me to like go to work. And I was like, that's interesting. That is interesting. So I convinced my dad that ghosts are real and that I had been seeing his ghost for 15 plus years, and he got to meet him.
So it's December of 2013. My grandmother lay upstairs dying, and I was living in the basement at the time. I woke up around 1 a.m. in the morning, and there was a hooded figure in the middle of the room staring at me. And the strangest thing about this was that I wasn't scared, and I'm scared of everything. It seemed like a very calming, familiar entity. He was searching for something, and I looked at him and I said, she's upstairs. And I laid back down and went to sleep. And my grandmother died the next night.
So this will include a Ouija board, which I feel like a lot of these stories probably start with Ouija boards, which should tell you everything you need to know about them. Like, it's not a good experience either way. So this happened to me many, many years ago when I was in high school. So like 15, almost 20 years ago. And my mom and stepdad and myself had moved into a new house. And in this house, there were things happening that felt haunted, but like it never felt really like dark or scary. But there was an in-law suite in our basement, which is where the previous owners, I think they're like grandma or like mom lived. And there was like a bathroom that was also in a laundry room, but it was mainly just a shower stall down there. And randomly the shower would go turn on, the like washer for laundry, water would just start running. And that in the basement was where we would also watch like movies and TV. And our dog would sometimes like look into the air and like start snapping, like growling and like trying to bite the air, almost like something was like taunting it. So we had these feelings that like, you know, there was something still there. And I remember my sister and I think we found a Ouija board there, which again, like we should have just threw it out. But I was in high school, and we decide that we're going to like contact this woman that we think is bugging my dog, but also like just randomly turning on the water in the shower and the laundry machine, and just like tell her to like go into the light kind of thing, right? But the thing is that later I was told by a priest about Ouija boards is who you think you're contacting may not always be who you're contacting, if you believe in that. And so we use this Ouija board and we think we get in contact with this lady, you know, like it's doing the things that a Ouija board does. It's moving and answering questions and things like that without my sister and I touching it. So like it was quite the experience. And it was about a week or so later that I was sleeping and I woke up and felt this like dark figure and saw this dark figure like literally over top of me, choking me. Now, I know now that that's like a common sleep paralysis kind of dream or experience, but at that time, I had never experienced anything like that. I had had lots of like nightmares as a kid. You know, I grew up with high anxiety and then also had experienced trauma as a child. And so that typically presents itself in, you know, pretty graphic or violent nightmares. And, you know, I often would like crawl into my siblings' bed or like sleep on the floor in my parents' room because I was scared. But at that point, I was 16 years old. I wasn't like crawling into other people's beds from nightmares. I'd kind of gotten over that phase. So when I, you know, woke up out of sleeping and felt this like figure choking me, I was terrified. And I managed to like struggle and get out and finally catch my breath because I felt like I wasn't breathing at all. And I called my sister on my cell phone and put her on speakerphone, and I was like freaking out. I told her what had happened, that this thing had like, you know, tried to choke me in my sleep, and I was terrified. And she told me like, you need to put on black clothes because that will help like protect you from these things you're feeling. And the only reason why we knew that is because her and I had gone to see a psychic like years prior, and the lady said to both of us that both of us should wear more black because we're empaths and we're more like open to feeling things around us and like spirits around us, and that would help like block that out. And so my sister said, you know, you need to put on some black clothes and go get like mom and my stepdad. And so as I'm doing that, my speakerphone turns off and I can hear my sister like, you know, kind of shouting into the phone, Heather, like, get out of your room now. And so I get out of my room and, you know, pick up my phone, and she's like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know, my speakerphone went out. Like, I'm so terrified. She's like, go get your, you know, my mom and my stepdad. And so I open their door and go into the room and immediately feel like I got like pushed to the ground. Like I fell to the ground and was crying, so upset. And they were like, what happened? What's happening? What's wrong? You know, obviously freaked out. I come into their room and at nighttime when I'm supposed to be sleeping, and like fall on their floor and start crying and freaking out. And my stepdad said later that he felt this like immediately dark dread, like this heavy darkness when I fell on the floor and came into their room crying. And not just from like the shock of seeing me, but just like this really like a blast of like dark air, almost, in a sense, like just this heavy feeling. And so I told them what happened and that I was terrified. I was so scared. And my mom was like, okay, well, just sleep in our room tonight. Like, you don't have to go back to that room. You're okay. You're safe. You're with us. Nothing will happen when we're here. At 16, sleeping in your parents' bed is a little weird, granted, but that's how terrified I was. I truly didn't feel like safe enough to go sleep in my own room again. And as the days go on, things start happening more and more around me. Like, things are flying off my desk or clattering off shelves. More things are happening in the house. I'm getting increasingly like more anxiety about sleeping and having these nightmares and just being terrified. And I go to school and I'm feeling exhausted because I'm barely getting sleep at this point. I go to school and I was in this photography class. At that time, it was film photography. They did, of course, have digital photography, but they were still teaching film. And so we had this dark room, which is where you process your film. And it's pretty much like a windowless, not pretty much, it is a windowless room. Like, imagine just like working in a really big closet that has like no windows. The door is covered by like a curtain so you don't let any like light in. The whole purpose is to process your photo paper and not have any additional light hit the photo paper, because then the photo paper is worthless, essentially. And so I'm processing photos in there with another boy from my class. And all of a sudden, all of my photo paper just flies off of the countertop and scatters all over the floor. And I'm, freaked out, but I'm kind of used to it at this point because this whole week things have been happening around me. And he is scared. He's like, what happened? What was that? Like, what did that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, sometimes things like that happen around me. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, don't worry. And I just didn't want to freak him out more. And he was like, no, we need to get out of this room. Like, I don't feel comfortable. We need to leave. And I was like, okay. So we'd like pack up all our stuff and leave. And he's like, man, that was so freaky. Like, that felt like something really like dark. Like, I don't know. That was so scary. I don't know if I could ever like go in that room again. I was like, no, like, don't worry. It's not that room. I think it's like something's happening. And so that night I go home from school and I tell my mom. She's like, that's it. We're going to see a priest. I had grown up Catholic, but like wasn't overly religious at that point. So we go to the priest and he, asks me some questions. I'm telling him what happened in the scenario, and he's giving me some tips and prayers to say, gives me holy water to, sprinkle around my room, do crosses above all of the doorways, say certain prayers all around the house to like remove this feeling, this, entity. And, he told us to get rid of the Ouija board, of course. And I remember asking him, like, has anything like this ever happened to you? And he just went really quiet. And he's like, I don't really like to talk about it. And I was like, well, like, I feel like I'm going crazy. Like, like I'm making this stuff up. And he's like, no, you're not making this stuff up. This happens. I live in a church, so of course I see things. I was like, okay. So we go home, we do all of these like prayers and stuff and do the holy water, and immediately I feel better. But still, years later, I still felt like this thing was attached to me. And it took a really long time for me to like get rid of that feeling, that terrified, like dark dread. And I would still have like these reoccurring nightmares or night terrors where this thing was chasing me and I couldn't talk or breathe. But gladly, I've gotten over it. And I don't have those nightmares anymore. We moved to a different house, and yeah, it's strange how it just kind of like left one day.
In my life, I've seen angels, demons, ghosts, and deities. And I'm gonna give you a story about the time I saw a ghost. This was in Arlington, Virginia. And my friend, she lived at this apartment that was right next to a cemetery. I think the cemetery is called Columbia Heights Cemetery. Yeah, so every other night we would go there to like smoke in the middle of the night. And one night as we're smoking, we're walking through, and we see two people under a tree. And it was a guy and a girl, but like there was something really off about them. Like they had this whitish tint that was kind of translucent. And I kind of didn't think too much about it. I just wanted to keep walking. But my friend, she was really bold. So she decided to call out to them and be like, "Hey, are you guys okay?" And the guy, I swear, he glided towards us. There was no stride in his step. He didn't make a sound. He didn't say anything. He just looked at us and floated towards us. Okay, the best way I can describe this, have you watched any of the Harry Potter movies? The way that the ghosts are depicted, except they don't talk. They can't talk. But the way that they move and the way that they look, that's exactly how it looks. We sometimes still talk about it now, like to this day, but yeah, that's one of my ghost stories. If you want more stories, just comment, ask. I will slowly open up more and more. I'll try to post every day, but yeah.
Alright, so this is my scary story. Some of you guys might remember this story because I'm pretty sure I told it a while ago, like several years ago. But I'm going to tell it again because it was really scary. So I used to live in this house. It was actually the house that I grew up in. I lived in it from age 5 to 22. And it was in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is already like a pretty haunted. I think they call it like one of the most haunted cities in the country. But this house definitely had some strange goings on in it. I don't know if it was a ghost, like a spirit or a poltergeist, or what it was, but I have a lot of stories about this house. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to tell this one story, but if you guys want to hear more, then let me know and I can tell you more. It's been a long time since I told a scary story on my TikTok, so telling this story is honestly kind of giving me nostalgia vibes. It's kind of taking me back to a simpler time. But anyway, this particular story happened when me and my sister Honey were the only two at home. So my dad, I remember, was on a walk. He used to go on nightly walks just to get that cardio in. And my other sister who lived with us was somewhere else. She was like at her friend's house or something. So me and Honey, my oldest sister, were the only ones home at the time. And we were sitting on the couch in the living room just taking some quizzes on Facebook, I remember. That's how long ago this was. We were taking quizzes on Facebook and we started hearing something like rattling coming from upstairs, which directly above us was my dad's bedroom. So we started hearing like odd noises like shuffling, like that type of thing coming from the ceiling, which was the floor, to my dad's bedroom. And the noises kept getting louder and louder. Eventually, after this going on for quite a while, like maybe, honestly, I want to say like 30 minutes or so, because my dad would usually go on walks for like 45 minutes, and this had been going on for quite some time. So I want to say it had been going on for about 30 minutes or so. We were hearing noises, and it started to morph into the sound of footsteps. I say it morphed into the sound of footsteps because it literally sounded supernatural, if that makes sense. You guys are probably gonna think I'm crazy, but it did not sound like normal. Like it sounded like it defied logic, if that makes sense. So it was just like shuffling, and then all of a sudden it morphed, like it transitioned into footsteps, and the footsteps got heavier and heavier, and me and Honey we looked at each other and we were like, "Do you hear that?" And when we said, "Do you hear that?" like right when we acknowledged it out loud, the noises turned into like stomping footsteps. And we weren't doing anything at this moment because all this was happening so fast, and we were pretty young at the time. At least I was young at the time. I was 13, Honey was like 18. And I feel like we just didn't know what to do in that moment, but it turned into like stomping footsteps, and it all happened so fast. And my dad would keep a gate in front of his room because he didn't want the cat to go into his bedroom, but he wanted to keep the door open for like airflow. And our cat was morbidly obese, so he couldn't jump over the gate. So whenever my dad would go into his room, you could hear the gate like moving. It was a distinct noise. Nothing else, no other like house noises sounded like this particular gate moving, so it was very distinctive. And right when we acknowledged it out loud, when we said, "Do you hear that?" It turned into stomping footsteps, and then we heard the gate in front of my dad's door move open, and stomping footsteps came down the stairs. Now, it's important to note that the stairs were right next to us, like the sofa that we were sitting on, it was right next to like the foyer area. And so the stairs were literally right next to us, but they were like winding stairs. So we couldn't see the top half of the stairs. We could only see the bottom half. And our dad's bedroom was right at the top of the stairs. So right after we heard the gate open, we heard the footsteps stomping down the stairs. And it was so scary. We knew it wasn't the cat because we had the cat with us. And it just, I feel like it traumatized me because every time I talk about it, I get so scared and I feel like I don't want to conjure anything up. Like, I feel like, oh. But, so we heard the footsteps coming down the stairs and it was stomping down the stairs, and we were just sitting there in shock for what felt like several seconds, but I'm pretty sure it was just like 1 or 2 seconds. And as soon as I like processed what I was hearing, I got up and I ran past the stairs, and I ran directly to the garage door, and I ran out the door into the garage, and I turned around and Honey was not with me, so I ran back inside to get my sister. And she was in frozen shock on the sofa. And when I ran back inside to get her, there was nobody there. There was no body to the noise. There was no one there.
When I tell this story to this day, people do not believe me. When I was turned off completely. It was at 70-80%. It was not anywhere close to dying. Turned off, died. Other girls' phones started dying. Then we heard a growl. And it did not sound like an animal. It sounded more like a human being trying to mimic what an animal sounds like when they growl. And we found this out later that
Yeah, sure, yep. I have a few ghost stories. They spook me the fuck out, right? So here's the boop. Here's the story. I've told it before, but you know, for the internet, here you are. I was in Puerto Rico. I think I was in my junior year of high school, and I was looking for colleges. I was looking at what colleges I wanted to go to, and my uncle and I, we take this little trip. We're on the island already, and we're, you know, traveling to wherever it is that we have to go, and we stop at an Airbnb before Airbnbs were a thing. You know what I mean? This was like years ago. And it's an elderly couple. They've got to be, they got to be like late 60s, late 70s, early 80s. And maybe not that old, but like super up there. And, you know, we come across the sighting and we see like, oh, okay, cool. We'll stay here for a few days. They had a duplex, but it wasn't a side-by-side duplex. It was an up and down duplex. So, they say, hey, we're going to go visit family in whatever part of the island they're going to. And they say, no, you guys can stay here. This is the set rate, blah, 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 blah. And they give us the rules of the house, right? Okay, cool. Me and my uncle, we oblige. We pay them half up front. Cool. They leave. Now, at this point in time, I am not old enough to go live the nightlife in PR. Not yet. So, you know, I'm at the space. I'm at the place. My uncle goes out. He goes to the bar. And he's like, hey, man, just fucking behave. And I'm like, cool. I got my Xbox. I got my phone. I'm talking to my homies. We're playing fucking, I don't know, whatever game was out back, Halo, whatever. And eventually, you know, time passes. And it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I hear just this knocking, or like this tapping, rather, is what it was. It was just this tapping noise. And this tapping noise, no matter where I went in the house, the noise sounded close to me, but I was never close enough to the noise to know that that's where the noise was. Does that make sense? Like, no matter what room I was in, it was the same volume, but it never, like, let me know that I was close to what was making the noise, right? Something, Jesus Christ, it's something in the walls, it's something in the, it's like a heater, it's not gonna, and I fucking freak out, right? Because it's just been, that's just been this, right? And then, I'm freaking the fuck. I run to the room, I shut the door, I've never yelled louder, slam the door, I call my uncle, I'm like, hey, dude, hey, some shit is fucking going on. I need help. He goes, oh, you're just being a chump. You're being a lame. I'll be home. Not worried about it. He comes home. It's like 5 in the morning. Of course, the noise stops. Noise has stopped now until the next night comes around. I'm like, hey, Unc, don't leave. Don't leave me. I'm terrified. Now, mind you, that those noises happened all night until my uncle got home. Repeat. Night number 2. My uncle stays. Okay. On 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock. You hear it? He's like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, I'm not doing nothing. Come to the room with me. And we hear the noise. We walk around the house. And we freak the fuck out. And this goes on all night. This goes on all night. All night. All night. This goes on. And we are freaking the fuck out. The 3rd day comes around and we're ready to fucking go. We are ready to go. As a matter of fact, we don't even stay in the house the 3rd day. We get whatever sleep we can and we're out on the fucking town the entire day. Okay? We call the people whose house it is. They come back, right? And my uncle pays them the rest of the money. They ask how the stay was. And we're like, oh, well, it was relatively good, right? The house didn't burn down. It didn't catch fire. But the fuck is this noise? What are we doing? What are we doing? So the husband, he kind of looks he looks distraught when he turns around and goes inside the house. And the wife starts to tear up and she goes, well, what happened? And my uncle goes, well, we were fucking sleeping and we heard this tippity tappity tapping. Boom, 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 boom. And then like somebody like fucking like just aggressively just strummed a fucking guitar. And this lady, I'm getting fucking goosebumps. This lady says to me and my uncle, she goes, I am, oh, I'm about to, she goes, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. We should have told you about her. And me and my uncle go, what? What'd that mean? You should have told about her. What'd that mean? Their daughter, okay, this was like 60 years before. I don't know. The daughter was fairly young. She was like 10. She would jump rope. Okay, so also let me preface. Everywhere in Puerto Rico, like, is tile floor. You're very rarely going to find a rug floor. She was jumping rope. She was jumping rope. Wearing socks inside the house on tile. She clipped herself and fell down the steps. And her father used to play in a band. Guess what he played? The guitar. The little girl tripped over the fucking jump rope, stumbled down the steps, and broke her neck on her father's guitar. And that's what we heard all night. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Okay, just to preface this, I don't think it sounds unbelievable unless you don't believe in ghost stories. But I have dealt with a lot of ghost stories, paranormal activity, hallucinations, and all that crap since I was very, very, very young. And this is my favorite one to tell because it always freaks everyone out. Now, I have seen everything. Well, not everything, but I have seen a lot of stories that were on stitches from this original video. And it's not as scary as that, but it's one of my favorites to tell, therefore I'm telling. So a couple of years ago, we moved from my childhood home and we had reasons to move from there. And there are stories from there as well, but let's not go there now. We moved from my childhood home and we moved to a new apartment. But that apartment was rented and we could only stay there for a year. So while we were there, we were looking for another apartment. We've managed to get another apartment in the same building complex. And I didn't feel like that was going to be a good idea, but you know what? We're going to get a home. That's fantastic. That's great. But when we went to visit it, there were a bunch of stuff on the ground. Like, they were like, anything that you want to keep, you can keep. Everything you don't want to keep, just throw away. And there were books and CDs, toys, clothes, like pieces of broken furniture. I have no freaking clue what happened there, but they just left a bunch of things behind. And it looked like straight out of a horror film. But we kept it anyway. And I decided to keep a book, an English book. And when those things started happening, I started thinking, maybe I shouldn't have kept a book. You know, maybe we should have just thrown everything out. And I was blaming myself on keeping the book. I didn't think the book had anything to do with it. But in that house, a lot has happened. Like, I have seen people. Usually when I see people, I see children, which is even more scary. But I've seen people more often than I did in anywhere else that I've lived before. I heard voices more often than anywhere else I have ever heard before. But the thing is, that apartment was pretty small. It was 3 rooms when we bought it, but my mom broke one of the rooms down to have a bigger kitchen because the kitchen was like this. So we ended up with 2 rooms, but it was my mom, my 2 brothers, and me. So my mom, my younger brother, and I shared a room, and my older brother had another room that was right across. And usually when I saw the kids, they were always in between the two rooms. But the thing is, I was a teenager and I wanted to be online until 4 a.m, because who doesn't? But if I'm sharing a room, I cannot do it in my room, or else my family is not sleeping and they're not going to allow me to do that. So whenever they went to bed, I went to the kitchen, I took my laptop, and I was there until the sun rose. Now, we already know that I hear voices all the time in that place, and we already know that I see people all the time in that place. But one of the things that freaked me out the most was one day I'm just chilling. I don't even remember what I was doing. Probably I was on Tumblr or something. And we had a little window that was pretty high. I couldn't reach it. And if you're from the outside, you can't reach it either, because to get into the apartment, you had to go through a good flight of stairs. So anyone from the outside cannot reach anyone from the inside. I mean, we are pretty short in my family. I'm only 5'2". I'm the tallest one in that house. We couldn't reach it either. But that's what my mom kept all of her vinegar, olive oil, pepper, and everything. But then we used a little step to reach the things from there. And then one day at 3:30 in the morning, not exactly 3:30, I think it was like 3:35. I do not remember the number exactly, but I remember being freaked out at that time because I have heard something about, 3 in the morning and whatnot. But anyway, at 3:30 in the morning, sort of, I just hear a noise, and it's like someone's walking. And I think my mom woke up, but I'm like, that's weird. I cannot hear the door. And the door from the bedroom was pretty loud. So I'm just, watching, because it was like, well, if it's not my mom, something else is going to show up. And I'm looking in this direction, right? Because the room is to this direction. And as I'm looking to this direction, while I hear the steps coming closer, I don't see anything. But all the bottles on the window that were over here, they started falling down one by one on the same, on the same beat. So it was like one fell, then the second one fell, then wait a little time and the third one. No, it was like doom, 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 doom. And they just fell on the ground and they completely shattered. And after the last one fell, a pan that was on the stove also fell. It was empty. But at that time, my dog started barking like crazy. And obviously, which dog would not? But she started barking like crazy. And for about 3 weeks, or maybe more, she would not come in the kitchen, which was something because that's where we kept her food. So she was refusing to eat because she did not want to go in the kitchen. But is that the only thing that was slightly creepy that happened in the house? No, because at that time, my grandmother was in the hospital. She was going to die. But at that time we didn't know, but she was about to die. It was a few weeks before. And when my oldest brother, wasn't home and my mom went out for a drink, there was a bar very near the apartment complex. So she would go outside, and then if she needed anything, she could just walk back in. So I was looking after my brother. I'm like 14, 15 at this point. No, not 14, 15. So I'm looking after my brother. I'm like 13 at this point, and he's in his room playing video games. And I go into my older brother's room because it was the only room in the house where I could turn the air conditioning on because his air conditioning worked. And I wanted to play some music and dance around a little bit. And I'm doing that as I usually did. And then I hear a very extremely loud bang on the window. Once again, the windows are pretty high, but this was actually a proper window. So it could not be kids running around and just, knocking on people's windows because there was no way they would reach. Again, I'm 5'2". From the outside of the house, it was about this high for me. But from the inside of the house, it was about here. So it couldn't be just kids messing up with people because it was very strong. So you needed to be able to knock at least like this. And it was strong and desperate. And I thought it was my mom. Maybe she couldn't get in and she was, went around to knock on the window so I would hear her because she knew I would be doing that. And I opened immediately. There is nothing there. No one. I look to the side. No kids. Not anyone. I close it, feeling freaking terrified. And I go back to stay with my brother. And when my mom comes home, I'm like, Mom, did you come and knock on the window or something? And then gave up because it was a very loud and desperate knock on the window. And I thought it was you, but no one was there. She was like, no, but what time is it? And that was 9 something in the evening. And I said it, and she's like, that's actually weird because at this bar that she was at, she went into one of the stalls to use the bathroom. And they only had 2, one for men and one for women. And someone knocked at around the same time with the same desperation to go in. And my mom is like, it's busy. And then the person knocked again. And my mom is like, it's busy. I'm coming out. The person knocked again. And my mom just didn't reply this time. She got ready to leave and opened the door. There was no one there. So she thought the person had left. And then she went to the bar guy, like the bartender, and be like, hey, whoever was trying to get into the bathroom, you can let them know that it's free now. And they're like, no one went there after you. So when they talked to my mom after, she was like, well, that's slightly weird, isn't it? And then in Brazil, we have a lot of spiritual people. Like there's a proper religion called Kardechism, and there's a bunch of different ones that very similar. And I remember telling it to a friend of mine who is part of this religion, and like they have a whole different set of beliefs. And it's very interesting, actually. And I remember telling her what happened. The second that I said someone knocked, she went, you didn't open the window, did you? And I'm like, yes, I did. And she's like, fuck, you shouldn't have. I still don't know what that means.